Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, we're going to have an energy update. It's about that time of the year to begin to think about what? Gas prices, energy prices going up, are they going down? But first, two of the state's leading journalists are going to talk about what is the legislature not done? Well, and it's not the budget. All of that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back. Well, joining me, as often is the case, is Brad Bumsted. He's a journalist and a columnist with the Tribune-Review, Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, and Robert Swift with Times-Shamrock Newspapers. I got that right. Long title. Robert, let me start with you. Legislature obsessed with the budget, rightly so. No one can criticize. They have it at the airing of this. We still don't think we have a budget. But there are a number of things that the legislature has not done, put on the back burner. Just go through some of them, and then we'll pick up a couple of them in detail. Yeah,
there's only so much political oxygen in the air, and so stuff that didn't get done would be trying to curb the impact of electric deregulation when rates come off.
Okay.
And that's electric rate hikes. What to do about whether you're going to ever toll Interstate 80 or not, and if you don't, fill in the revenue gap that they wanted. The governors have plans to expand prescription drug coverage for seniors, create a Department of Aging and Long-Term Care.
Right.
Those are all, nothing's happened.
So in other words, Brad, you're a veteran. You've been through so many of these before. Now, typically, this time of year, they wouldn't be. Where would they be?
Well, that's right, and it's somewhat of a faulty premise to say they could be doing all these other things, because if they got the budget on time by July 1st, they wouldn't be here. They'd be on vacation. So, and now they're only here, have been, a day or two a week at most.
So in other words, your point is that these are important things. Now, how about if the budget would go on into September and October and they're
December.
Not into December, yeah. And as Robert keeps pointing out, they're not really in session at the same time. House in 1 week, Senate in. I mean, there is the possibility that it does create a situation where these important things get postponed or delayed or not taken up at all, or no?
Not to undermine the importance of any of these things, but there is a school of thought out there, Terry, that the less the legislature does, the better off we are.
That's true.
Now, there are some things on here, like the electric deregulation, that if it's not addressed, you might have an uprising from ratepayers. But all they can really do with it is stagger the higher rates that are going to come in, because they made a deal with electric companies. 10 years, we have rate caps, and after that, you can raise them. So that is something that is important. And the revenue gap that exists because of not tolling I-80 is a flaw from Act 44.
The feds haven't, as of this airing, given approval to tolling 80. And
no.
Robert, that's something I know, given the location of your newspapers up there, that you've covered pretty extensively. Give us an update on that.
Well, they're trying to, talk with the Federal Highway Administration and revise an application to toll that got turned down before. And, of course, that was the Bush administration.
Right.
And now you have a new administration, and to see if there's any more receptivity. That has alarmed the coalition among the towns along the I-80 corridor to once again gear up to try to fight this.
That's pretty I mean, I've been up there doing some talks and traveling in the northern part of the state. I mean, earlier on, when they talked about tolling, I mean, the issue here is about $400 million or so in revenues, which the state would get each year from the tolls. Is that right?
Yes.
Or is it more than that?
It's about $400 million.
Okay, about $400 million. So it's a pretty big issue. But the opposition up there has gotten steel. I mean, it's back. The backs are up, and I mean, it is very fierce.
Many towns along there have distribution warehouses along Interstate 80.
Right.
That's one of the main jobs that they have up there. Now you do see calls down in Philly and Pittsburgh areas. They want it because it's not on their back. So you do see calls to do it in the big cities.
A lot of this could get pushed off onto the next governor. Some of these things don't have to be until 2011, such as the I-80 tolling, and a portion of the electric deregulation, wouldn't come in until 2011. So, knowing Governor Rendell, I can't see him wanting to, ignore particularly the transportation thing, but inertia in the legislature could cause that to overlap into the next governor's term.
But this is still, I mean, on balance, a pretty big list. Again, notwithstanding Brad's point that some of these can wait, but this does not seem like the legislature has been doing a lot because of this budget impasse.
It does seem that way to a lot of people, but one of the things that is being done, and it's probably not being written about very much outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and that is municipal pension reform.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a bill through the House, and the Senate was voting on a bill that basically provides for takeover of severely distressed municipalities who have less than half of the money needed to meet their liabilities.
You wanted to say something?
One thing that I remember, normally when a budget is passed in late June, even early July, there's maybe a whole bunch of bills are passed with it, and that's normally just a lot of deals are cut.
So they make that's right. So in other words, some
of this might have come through at that time.
And that typically we'd see a flurry of I'll call them companion bills, even though they may not be related, that get done at the same time, right?
Because the budget is used as leverage to get some of those companion bills.
But here's a point, and I think both of you have made this. I know that I've read stuff that you've written. Last year alone, after they went out, around July 4, whatever, after the budget, until the end of December, the House and the Senate were only in session together something like 8 or 9 days.
Something like that.
And somebody made the argument that that's virtually makes them part-time, that even some of these important things that were on the table then, is this, I can't get a sense about whether it's the normal occurrence that they put controversial things off, or this budget cycle has the whole legislature just out of whack.
I think it's more of a continuing theme that they are pretty much a part-time legislature masquerading as a full-time legislature. And I'll tell you what, one of the most effective systems I ever saw when I worked in Florida was the legislature would meet 2 months a year, and they were busy, 18 hours a day.
We're going to run to break. Go ahead.
One thing that has happened, that any bills that have any cost to it have been challenged or stopped from moving.
So they're stopped from. All right, we're going to break. We'll be back. Reporter update, that and more following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back. Brad Bumsted and Robert Swift, both leading journalists in the state, are in the House to talk about a number. Budget's off the table. I'm not letting them talk about the budget. We're doing other things other than the budget. Look, Brad, we had this big thing with legislative reform, changing the way the legislature functions, trying to clean up some of these practices. One of them, this was pretty big news, had to do with Senator Mello from Lackawanna County, who apparently leased an office to himself, in effect. Essentially to himself, his wife, and then he got divorced, and there's been a big brouhaha about that, and there's been some interplay within the Senate itself. What's the basic outlines of that story? I know Robert's written about this. We'll come back to him in a minute.
Well, Senator Mello, who is the Democratic leader in the Senate, was leasing his district office from a company that his wife had part ownership of for 6 or 7 years. When they got divorced, then it was transferred to him. Under the Senate rules, the Senate chief clerk is supposed to do an appraisal of any property that a senator would be involved with. The Senate rules more or less allow it, okay? But there's a big question as to whether state ethics law prohibits it. And the Philadelphia Inquirer has reported that the FBI has interviewed Senator Right.
How is this a big story? I mean, you've covered a lot of these stories over the years. Is this a bigger story than, or is this just a typical? I
think it's a bigger story in the post-pay rate controversy era, when there's been a widespread, I think, assumption among many people in the state that a lot of these things, legislative consulting contracts is another issue, that have been cleaned up. And then all of a sudden these things pop up, and then Senator Scarnati, the President Pro Tem, had to send a letter to every senator asking them if they have any business ties to any of their district offices, and he self-reported back that no one has currently. But
except for Jim Furlow.
Yeah. Well, and that's a state senator from the Pittsburgh area.
He fired off an email back to Russ Faber and copied it to Scarnati, where he said, I'm not going to fill out any form. I don't have any interest. I would never do that. It's unethical, and you can put that form where the sun doesn't shine.
Well, we're getting deeply into, I almost said the bowels of the legislature, but I think it's a family show, so we're not going to go there. All right, let's look a little bit ahead here. Let's say the budget gets done September, early October. The legislature could be literally drained of all of its energy, and we could have a situation like last year. We've got now, even more importantly, Governor Rendell, lame duck. Republicans in the Senate aren't obviously going to want to give this guy a big victory. We'll be in the throes of the 2010 gubernatorial election. What's the dynamic ahead, do you think, Robert?
The dynamic in the legislature, by December, they're starting to worry about if they're going to have a challenger or not.
Oh, their own election.
Their own political calendar sort of takes precedence over what they're doing. I've been writing about this being a bitter budget fight, and that the ties among these caucus leaders and the governor are certainly some more stressed and strained that we've seen in I'd say, decades. So you wonder, if they get through this budget, how can they start to work together on other stuff?
Final look, legislators up for re-election, the pay hike on their minds has to be 70-some new lawmakers, within the last 2 election cycles. How important do you think are their minds, legislators' minds, on re-election, as Robert points out? Very
much so, and I think that the leaders are also looking at the gubernatorial election.
Yep.
And there's a school of thought that a lot of this is an effort by Republicans to drag this out as long as possible, with Rendell's history of that would be 7 years of late budgets. They can say, never again, we don't want to do this, we need a new way of operating. I'm not sure that that's true, but a lot of people think that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the next governor's election, in the midst of this deficit and some of these unresolved issues, as we've talked about, it's going to be a wild year in Pennsylvania politics next year. All the reporters can smile because it's a lot to cover, right? You guys are going to be busy.
It creates the climate for a candidate running against Harrisburg.
Yep, there we go. And that's been true in many, many cases in the past. Almost everybody who runs against the culture in Harrisburg. Great update. All right, Mike Love is here. Energy update. All of that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Well, Mike Love, he's the president of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, is joining me now. He always gives us an energy update. We talk about prices and trends in the energy field. All right, let's talk about gasoline prices first and heating oil. We're going to head into the fall. Prices always spike up gasoline a little bit in the summer. What's likely to happen? Let's take gasoline first.
Well, I think you have been seeing that gasoline prices have been following the increases in a barrel of oil, and I think that will continue into the winter. What that means for those customers out there that heat with heating oil, that heating oil will be expensive vis-a-vis on average. It won't be as expensive as it was last winter, but it still will be very expensive.
Okay. So no immediate relief from, or put it another way, we won't have the lower prices we had in years going. Do you think this is a permanent problem? I mean, we'll have you back and we can talk about the big energy bill in Congress. I know it's passed the House, going to the Senate. We can talk about that later, but...
Well, we're also, the good news is that over 50% of the households heat with natural gas.
Right.
And natural gas prices are pretty much at an all-time low.
Okay.
And so that's good news. So people should see a less of a burden this winter, provided we don't have a harsh winter. Now, electric is the situation where we have to focus on. We do have rate caps coming off in PPL service territory.
Right.
What that means for the average customer is they're going to have to learn the benefits of shopping. When caps came off in Pittsburgh, rates went down. Rates will probably go up in PPL service territory, but the percentage estimate has dropped precipitously from where it was last year at this time. And what happened in Pittsburgh is there were 20 competitors that came into the scene that commercial and industrial customers had 20 competitors to choose from, and residential had 4 to 5.
So, in other words, now we did what I think a lot of our viewers did, was to go, I'm a PPL customer, and we did the prepayment, I guess, on the expected hike. I don't have any sense about how many people have done that, but that seemed to sort of mitigate some of the problems in the expected jump.
It certainly did. It was a marvelous program that PPL came out with, and customers who took advantage of that program earned effectively 6% money on their interest. And in this day and age, that's good. But what I am saying to you is we've already started to see the ads for Constellation Energy and Direct Energy, 2 huge companies that are going to be competing with PPL. Yeah. And so people are going to have more choices before. So all you can say about the PPL territory, it may be different.
Yeah.
Later on, PECO, First Energy, and Allegheny will come off. And the Public Utilities Commission has done a study that said if PECO came off today, rates would go down like they did in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
If in Allegheny, rates would go up minimally, First Energy rates would go up some.
Yeah. Let's talk. I want to get into the LIHEAP, the program that helps folks, the poor folks with some of their heating bills. But let's go to this electric deregulation thing. There are proposals in the legislature that would postpone lifting the caps. In other words, would allow the market to determine the price and not to continue to have them suppressed, in a sense, by government regulation. What's your sense about what's going to happen there?
Well, I don't think that many people would have come on this program months ago and predicted that we'd be sitting here in September thinking about budgets. I don't know what's going to come about with the rate cap situation. Yeah. What I will say is that LIHEAP, when we get around to discussing it, will have a far greater impact on where rates are in the state and how many people are impacted in the state than anything that's going to happen on a deregulation.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk about this. This is an important program that we've talked about on a number of occasions. We'll be back with more with Michael Love following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. All right, there are big changes. We're talking about the budget and the federal stimulus program and its effect, but there's a lot of uncertainty. A big story in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette recently. Mike Love was quoted in it, and we're talking about federal funding for the state's heating assistance program. All right, talk about that program. Why is this program important and what's happening to it?
Well, this is a program that I remember when it started 30 years ago, and the program is federal dollars designed to help low-income people be able to pay their energy bills. And we have a situation in Pennsylvania where we're about to embark on one of the worst plans I've ever seen. Last year we had the plans open so people could apply for 5 months, from November through April. Now there will be no opening of the program prior to December 1st, which means that 265,000 households that received dollars last year prior to December 1st will get nothing before winter. Why is that important? A lot of people wait and depend on the LIHEAP money to pay their energy bill, and they'll be off. We have a lot of customers, gas customers, who say, you know, I'm just going to live without gas over the summer. I'm not going to pay the minimum charge.
Well, that's a little bit different than the winter. I mean, we all can sweat a little, but we certainly can't free. I mean, you know.
I know.
This seems crazy. I mean, this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It does not.
And why? Why? Why is this the case?
Well, for some reason, our Department of Public Welfare is assuming that they're going to get less dollars from the federal government than they got last year. Unfortunately for that assumption, it flies in the face that the House has reinstated the exact same amount of dollars they received last year. The Senate is passing it this week, and it's going to go on to the President. And we have a community action leader who is certainly going to approve LIHEAP dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
So why would you assume such a problem? The amount of people that are eligible, last year it was 200%, it's going to be 150% of federal poverty level. Last year people could get $800, and this year they'll only be able to get $300. The other social agencies certainly aren't going to have funds to supplement that.
Yep.
And we're going to have hundreds of thousands of households facing the winter without heating assistance, which the state will ultimately get from the federal government, probably will get it in October. And other states run their programs. They start in October, end in May. They start in November, they end in April. They give 175% of federal poverty level, all run far more fairly to customers.
Yeah, we have about 40 seconds left in the program, but tell me this. The Post-Gazette reported that welfare officials said that they're having an alternative set of eligibility requirements, you know, shortening the time period. Is there any hope that welfare department will create a better situation?
I don't know, but I do know that if you're low income, you should be contacting your legislator, because this is a very serious problem.
All right, you heard it from Michael Love. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.